Thank you very much for having me. So, for those of you who don't know Edelman is the world's largest public relations firm. My role there is to help the organization and our clients understand what the future of media looks like. Specifically, the intersection between social media and traditional media, and the role that brands as content creators and content curators play. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little story. You can find this in an ebook form on my site, which you can download. My site is at steverubel.me, about what I've learned about the media in the last 6 months or so, and what the implications are for all of you that are in publishing. I just think that the media industry is at a dynamic kind of inflection point right now, and there's a lot that can be learned no matter what part of the business or what part of the media you touch. So let me start with a scenario here. It's 2008. Back then, there was a conventional wisdom that the media, at least as we know it, is dying. I mean, you had a Twitter account that got set up called The Media is Dying. It's attracted 25,000 followers. I mean, you had newspapers laying off lots of people. You had newspapers folding, still have them folding. And so there was this conventional wisdom back in 2008 that, hey, you know what? Social media killed media. But, the reality is that a funny thing happened on the way to the funeral. The media used innovation to, basically claw its way back up to relevance. You have everything from blogs launching full tablet magazines, like Engadget's done there on the left. You have television shows that have reinvented and basically played defense against the DVR by building what's called second screen experiences, or working with partners like Get Glue, like you see there, rewarding people for watching shows. Even though they're static shows, they've reinvented live TV. And then finally you have this whole motion, this movement towards publishing ebooks. Every publisher now is going through their archives and finding, ways to repackage content from ages ago in ebook form. All of these are forms of innovation. And the media has evolved. And we see it in the data. The payoff's been huge. The press is more trusted than ever. We do a tracking study every year called the Trust Barometer. And media was the only institution this year that we tracked, when you look at corporations or NGOs, that saw trust increase. Now, it varies by country, and the great countries we didn't track, but you can just see media is back. And we believe that part of it is in how they're crowdsourcing data from social networking and how they're using that for reporting and distribution of their content. It's playing a role in their increased trust. So this piqued my interest. What's going on? How did the media get its mojo back? What can we all learn from that experience? So last year I set out on a journey to learn as much as I could. I visited with media executives. I visited with, junior editors who were fresh out of school. I went and met people at the platforms who work, social networks who work with publishers. And I also talked to content creators inside large organizations, people who are being hired as journalists, brand journalists. And when I went on this journey, so far, 5 rules emerged. There are 5 new ways of doing business that I think, whether you're a publisher, a startup, or an existing company, are rules that if you could be applied, no matter who you are. And I'd like to take you through what these kind of 5 rules are and what the implications are for your business. So my journey started with a guy named Jim Bankoff, who is CEO of a company called Vox Media, which runs Sports Blog Nation. Sports Blog Nation has a really simple model. They found the best sports bloggers on the web and curated them into a network by team. And they gave them a way for them to monetize their content. And this site is slowly crept its way into the top 10 sports sites. If you think about sports and the internet, it's one of the oldest online interest verticals. I mean, basically, as soon as we were all using web browsers, there were sports sites to browse. And here's somebody who came in with a different model. Let me find the best of the best by team and roll them up into a network, and doing well as a business. So curation can be a business. And it's not just in sports, though. It applies in breaking news. On the left is Lauren McCullough, and she works for MSNBC. And she's part of the editorial team at Breaking News, which is a site that they bought the Twitter name from somebody and relaunched. And what they do and do better than anybody else is curate content from around the web. That's how I heard how that Whitney Houston died. I heard from @Breaking News. I went on Twitter and I saw that they were right in my feed, and I heard within minutes of it hitting AP. And they sourced AP. They credited AP with the story. So curation can be a business model in news. And then finally, the three gentlemen on the right, Mark Courtney, Vadim Leversik, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on names all of a sudden, LinkedIn. These are all people who are helping to curate content from around the web. LinkedIn has built a very successful site called LinkedIn Today that was one of the top traffic drivers to news sites. So the social networks are getting into the content curation play as well. Mark Courtney is with Tumblr. And obviously they're helping journalists. They just hired an editorial team to crawl Tumblr like it's a city and report on news. And then finally you have curators that sit on top of the curators. You have Flipboard, Zeit, and News 360, and all of these kind of they're called aggregator apps that are primarily on the iPad, but they're moving their way into smartphones and Android tablets. Curation's a business. If you can separate art from junk, there's money to be made. I don't care. And so, long live editors. There's a lot of room in that market. So curation is a way to dominate. Second, as I went around and talked to different people, I'm seeing now that the media really gets math. They understand how to data mine for story ideas and content ideas and how to time it flawlessly. Okay, the guy there is Joe Roth. He's with Storyful. Storyful, what they do is they send out people. They basically find the people on Twitter who are closest on the ground to a story, roll them up into channels, and then license that dashboard to the media. They help the media do their job. You have editors now that are accessing data, and they act like the horse whisperer. They go and they advise their colleagues. Here's one story, break it up into 5. Because it was effective and it works. They data mine and they time more than ever. There's also a company called Social Flow that a lot of publishers are using to figure out when to time to send content from their website into Twitter. Next. I'm also noticing that the media is doing a lot more to keep their stories alive longer. I met with this guy, Robert Scoble. I'm sure a lot of you know him. And, he's a tech pundit. I would say he shoots about 50% from the pundit free-throw line. He gets about half of the men. He said to me, Steve, what Facebook is doing with verbs is game-changing. I was like, verbs? What are you talking about? What do you mean these verbs? And sure enough, he's right. I went and I looked into it. And I noticed that publishers like Spotify, for example, which is not really a publisher, or the Washington Post, which has built a social news reading experience, or The Guardian, which has built a social news reading experience, inside Facebook are seeing a dramatic return. The Guardian, in a month after turning on their Facebook news experience, saw 1 million new page views that they didn't have the month before. And that's because as people start to read content on Facebook, you will see that in your feed. 5 of your friends read the following story. And it's a signal to Facebook that content is important, and it surfaces it. It's part of the math and about how you keep a story alive longer. Michael Lazaro, who's with Buddy Media, talks about how if you add a Facebook share function to a simple web poll, a tiny percentage of people will share that they took that poll on Facebook. But that tiny percentage, which he guesstimates is about 10%, can drive a 13% increase in traffic to that page. It's huge. And it's the power of math and power of Facebook. TV Guide is now, more relevant than ever by becoming a complete second screen experience for all things TV using their iPad app, and they've seen millions of downloads. The media is understanding how to keep their story and their brands more relevant than ever, tapping into the power of math. Next, I went out to L.A. L.A. is not exactly the what you call the bastion of smart thinking. Full respect for those who come from L.A. But let me tell you, it's the center of where media is being reinvented, and it starts at USC. At the Annenberg School of Journalism, I met a gentleman. His name is Jeff Boucher. He's from the L.A. Times, 20-year L.A. Times veteran, 20 years at the L.A. Times. And, what he did was he has this love for comic books and science fiction. And he convinced the L.A. Times that there was a market for a science fiction blog that came out of Hollywood about comic books and about storytelling. And he launched a blog a few years ago called The Hero Complex. It's been a humongous success for the L.A. Times. They found a niche vertical that was high interest and unmet with authority, and they filled it. And then I met Dr. Henry Jenkins at USC, who invented what's called transmedia storytelling. And he talked about two planes of media, spreadable media and drillable media. And I think that we're seeing more media companies now everyone understands spreadable. Every media company, every publisher's on Twitter, everybody's on Facebook and thinking about how to spread their stories around. But there's a market for long-form drillable content when people want to go deep. And if you don't fill it, somebody else will fill it. And so we're seeing media companies roll in depth of information. And then finally, media, like a lot of other businesses, is becoming a game of superstars, just like sports. Right? So in sports, we have Derek Jeter with the Yankees. And, he's somebody who hopefully performs well, fills the seats, and, they pay him accordingly. And he's a brand onto himself. But he recognizes that his brand and the Yankee brand are aligned. Journalists and authors and publishers and increasingly people in corporations are recognizing that having stars out there who are identified with the team is a good strategy. They do get more scoops. They do get more page views on their stories. And they give them a rope to move on. They give them room. On the right there is Brian Stelter. He's with the New York Times. He's a young guy and he's a go-getter. And he's building his brand not just with the Times, but across platform. He did some great reporting on Tumblr during the Joplin tornadoes. Sometimes there's pain when when editors leave and there's disagreement between management, and TechCrunch saw that last year. It can sometimes resemble the drama that took place when LeBron James left the Cavaliers. But when you hold on to your superstars and you recognize there's a kind of everyone understands a symbiotic relationship, and it's team first, personal second, but they're aligned in spirit, it can work extraordinarily well. And it is working well. So those are the 5 rules. Curate. You can curate and you can dominate almost any niche. And if it's not being curated, go find it. 2, data, mind, and time. Understand. Use the data to inform your decisions and appropriately time it. There's ways to do that. There's science behind that. Look at ways to make your content last longer. Be spreadable, but be drillable as well. Fill in where there's a void. And then finally, make sure you cover your superstars. And this is just the beginning of what I've learned and what I hope to learn. I'm only as smart as the people around me. And so what I continue to do is to go meet with companies like BuzzFeed or go meet with CBS, and just understand how the way stories are being told is changing. And I share these on my website once a month, so you can find it there. And you can find me at Steve Rubel on Twitter, 1L. SteveRubel.me is where you can find the written download to this content. And the trust data I reference is at trust.edelman.com. Thank you.